So Underscores released what they are calling the director's cut of their album from last year, Wallsocket, which, if you can't tell by the fact I own it, is one of the best albums of the last year. But what they're calling it is the director's cut. Now, first of all, that's cool because that plays into the cinematic nature of the album. If you saw my review of the album, I really went into how it reminded me strongly and very favorably of the album Greendale by Neil Young. The same basic idea of a whole universe and a whole world filled with these characters in a little town, kind of Twin Peaksy, and all very quite good. I just realized that my shirt's inside out, but I don't edit my videos, so don't tell me in the comments that my shirt's inside out. I don't care. But what I do care about is director's cuts. Just even the term director's cut is pretty controversial. And basically there's two kinds of director's cuts. There's director's cuts, and then there's director's cuts. The good kind of director's cut, take for example Aliens by James Cameron, where he added 20 minutes of footage that he wanted in the movie, but 20th Century Fox, who did their best to destroy the Aliens franchise at every single possible turn. They failed to because they kept hiring good directors by mistake. But anyways, that's an example of a good director's cut. Then you have your bad director's cut. Take, for example, Ridley Scott's Alien. So that was re-released, and the movie came out in 1979. And if you watch the DVD commentary, which I have multiple times, that cool of a guy, you'll actually see Ridley Scott say right off the bat, "This is not a director's cut. I released the movie that I wanted to release. This is just a studio mandate. It's a gimmick to put it back out in theaters." You know, this whole idea that like it's a director's cut, it's actually an anti-director's cut. And so these are the two different ways you can think of it. It can just be sort of a crass cash grab. Man, that's hard to say. Crass cash gab. A crash gash gab? Okay. A crass cash grab. I'm sorry. I don't like cracking myself up on videos, but that is objectively funny. It can be a crass cash grab, or it can be an expression of an artist's real emotion and what they really wanted to show. Now, what's the problem with this great album? Well, Underscores, as far as I can tell, she was in control of this entire project. As far as I can tell, she was the architect. As far as I can tell, she was the songwriter. As far as I can tell, she was the editor. As far as I can tell, she determined everything that could have possibly happened on this album. So to call it a director's cut is to imply that like the other thing is what the studio didn't want you to do, but I don't think that's actually what's happening. So that's why in general for these kinds of projects I use the term DLC, meaning downloadable content. So DLC and director's cuts are both tied into technology, right? I mean, if Orson Welles could have released a director's cut of Magnificent Ambersons, then we would have, one of the greatest movies of all time. But as it was cut up by the studio, and we never really quite got what he wanted to release because it was the 40s. We're never going to get that movie. Had DVDs existed back then, I'm sure, RKO would have cashed that check and would have been like, all right, fine, you want to release another version and we'll be able to sell another DVD. We'll be able to do more, right? So it's because of DVDs, well, actually because of Laserdiscs. I almost bought a Hoffa Laserdisc today at the Record Archive. It was only $5, one of my favorite movies, but I didn't. So because of Laserdisc, because of DVDs, we had this whole idea that we can reinstate things that were there. DLC is sort of a close cousin to the director's cut because of this. Now that music is no longer really tied into the physical media. All right? I mean, I have the physical media back there. I have the Underscores album. I enjoy it. I listen to it all the time. I like looking at it. I like pondering the liner notes, like a real nerd. I'm sitting there and I'm studying the town of Wallsocket, Michigan, and I'm thinking about all the places. It's cool. It's very cool. But still, its real version is probably the digital version. Its real version is unfixed, much like The Life of Pablo taught me all the way back in 2016. Art no longer has physical form. So because of that, much like video games, you can just keep adding things in. So that's the sort of debate I have about, is this really a director's cut? or is it DLC? I think it's both. I think it's DLC, but the reason that I think we're going to stick with director's cut is the idea that it is a movie. It's emphasizing the cinematic nature of the story. And the most important thing that it does, that director's cuts do, because very often people just call director's cuts extended cuts, because directors very rarely want to cut things out. You know, it's not like she's going to release a director's cut of this album, like 3 of the songs are going to be missing. No one would buy that. It's the idea that more is more. And sometimes that doesn't work. You know, like if a movie is already too long and then you add more to it. As an example, I personally think that the cinematic cut of the Lord of the Rings movies are good enough. I don't need the extra stuff that Peter Jackson adds. I have them. I've watched them. It's fine. But that's a good example where sometimes more isn't more. But with a project like this kind of sprawling mosaic, this interesting concept of a town, I want to learn more about different inhabitants. I want to see who the people are. I want to follow more of the themes that are happening in this little town, because that's the nature of the story. I compared it to Thornton Wilder's Our Town before, and it really works. That, you know, you have these 3 main characters, or 4 maybe if you count one of the dads, but in general it's this commentary on life, on growing up, on small town pettiness, on crime, on the nature of income inequality, on social pressures, identity, all these things. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, she could release Wallsocket 2, and it would be great. You know, you just, you know, keep following these characters, keep being in here, because what she's able to do on this and on the original album is make songs that are interesting. You don't need the ARG, you don't need the alternate reality game. Is that what that stands for? I hate that stuff. I'm sorry. I don't like ARGs. I don't enjoy it. Just give me art. That's all I care about. It exists well as art and as a story. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about the first song, My Guy, Corporate Shuffle. It is a shuffle. I like that it's called Corporate Shuffle. Starts off with the good luck. One of the themes of the album is good luck, tied into the horseshoe there. And then you have the sound of what I believe is a Tickle Me Elmo laughing. That's why you have Elmo up there. I don't like Elmo, but I bought it for my baby because I realized if she's going to be watching Sesame Street, then Mr. Sky has to get used to Elmo. Anyways, dead on impersonation. And it's fun because, you know, I looked it up eventually. I looked up who the characters are, but again, I don't really want to focus on that. I want to just focus more on like this first verse. I don't really care who's saying it. It feels very effective at communicating small town pettiness and gossip and about a dermatologist, and you should really see my guy, and bad lip fillers, sort of a little pastiche of suburban housewives trying to outdo each other and compete with each other, and the idea you should really see my guy. The second verse appears to be about someone who's done something bad and should see a therapist, and you should see my guy. I love this idea, you know, that there are all these my guys that can exist. You know, I have a paper restorer who I work with, you know, and if you ever need a paper restorer, just ask me. I can show you my guy. My dad had a lot of great art, but he kept it in terrible shape. That's why I need a paper restorer. Most adults, by the way, if you're watching this, you're probably under the age of 30. Most adults don't have paper restorers, but I do. The third verse is just a great production on here, where you just have that clapping and singing and just this great guitar solos in here, and just so many great production. That's the thing that really blows me away on this whole project here. You know, as I read the comments, recorded, engineered, and mixed by Underscores, and it's just the amount of excellent production all the way through here. It's creepy. It's creepy because it bugs me that someone who feels so bedroomy can also make stuff so well produced. I guess I feel the same way about Quatica, a lot about these sort of this kind of genre, which I'm not going to name because I don't really know what to name it, but mainly just very well produced bedroom music that is neither bedroom music. You know, it's great. The next track is called Northwest Zombie Girl, kind of a cheerleader type song. All these cool screwed up voices. Northwest Zombie Girl with the pills under her tongue. This is fascinating because when I looked it up on Genius, it put forth the idea that some people who are doing some hormone therapy to aid in their transition take it intralingually, which means, you know, under the tongue. I hope that's what that means. Under the tongue so it absorbs better. So maybe it's about that. I read it more as like someone pretending to take a pill and then not really. So I read the song as being more of a heavily medicated person who is trying to get around taking their meds. I don't know. I can't quite tell. But again, that's the strength of the album. That really is the strength of the album. That you can sit here and try to decipher it and break down what each thing is each thing. I talked about this on the 21 Pilots album, which is really good, the last one, Clancy. Because it's like, you can sit there and be like, oh, these are the residents of Dima who are going to, all right, fine. Or you can just listen to the good music, Awesome guitar production on the second verse. It's just great. It's kind of like an emo pop punk song. It's not that hard. Super crazy bridge. I try not to fill up on bread. I try to feed my village. It seems like some real kind of middle-aged dude energy here. It seems like the song might be about someone who sexually exploits a younger woman and potentially kills her, I think, as far as I can tell. But I definitely love the try not to fill up on bread. Speaking to you younger people out there, when I was a kid, I used to go to a restaurant in Massachusetts called Bertucci's, and I'd go with my friends. And we'd go there because they had free bread and they had free refills on Coke. So we'd go, and it was like sloppy steaks. We'd order like 6 Cokes and then get the bread. And before the server would even put the bread basket on the table, we would all take as much bread as we could and say, can we please get more bread? And while she was taking it out, we had already sucked down 1 soda. So we'd have like 10 rolls. We'd have like 10 sodas. And then we eat like a calzone. When you get older, you don't do that anymore. You just have like 1 piece of bread. It's kind of a Weezer song, right? Like a Weezer song that isn't, like a well-done Weezer-like chorus. CCTV is funny because on this album, there's a song called Horror Movie Soundtrack, track 7, and this song is actually a horror movie. Like these synth strings, it's kind of a downbeat moment. She's singing super far away. And it seems to be, according to the Genius thing, according to the SoundCloud, I don't know. It's about someone who recounts her life beyond the grave, and it feels that way. This great descending guitar line, just a single note that just crashes into what I just described as like whenever I do videos on the floor, I have to keep moving around like CJ the X because like I can't just stay in one place because my leg falls asleep. So I have to do it like this. Yeah, super intense with 1/100th of the talent. So like this great single descending note on a guitar goes into what I describe as like a crashing ocean wave of just sound and radio beeps. And then it falls apart completely, like dead silence. And then a single 1-note string guitar comes in, very simple guitar all the way throughout, but simple and well made. Cinematic overtones, kind of like screaming, again, more of a horror soundtrack. These like trap style hi-hats, just like tightened to the extreme. How the Ricky Ticky hi-hat beats sometimes on trap or on drill music can just feel like it's just like barbed wire, like getting tightened around the beat. Has that kind of feel at the end of the expression. Fades out with this kind of oh motif, and then just this layers and layers of speech, of just talking, and it's a complete mess that just crystallizes and becomes clear over time. I have to turn off my notifications on my computer, stop watching TV, it rots the brain, and then eventually it all comes together with I'm always here for you, I'm always here for you. And someone dead saying I'm always here for you means they're either quoting someone who is lying or they are saying they're there for you and they can't be. The album ends, or the director's cut ends with stupid, can't run from the urge, crazy hyper pop ending, 4 on the floor dancing, almost like, I don't know, just so much like, it's like, at times it reminds me of sort of Daft Punk style production, and most of the time reminds me of, great Max Martin era Britney Spears. Can't take the girl out of the town, you can take the town. You can take the girl out of the town, you can't take the town out of the girl. Just this urge, I don't know. According to the Lyric Genius, this is about the urge to go back to your hometown. I get that, but it seems like there's this kind of, I don't know. So there's the whole question of the horseshoe theory, I don't actually really agree with it, that the extreme left and the extreme right are the same because they're also extreme. It's like true, except if one of them denies the humanity of other people, then it's actually bad. I'm probably the most centrist person, if you listen to underscores, I'm probably the most centrist person you've ever met, you know, in comparison to probably most listeners of underscores. But I don't actually believe in the horseshoe theory because, like, you know, people on the far left don't actually want to, like, exterminate anybody, you know what I'm saying? So I don't really believe it. So the way I read this, the horseshoe image, the horseshoe theory, and the idea, the stupid urge to go back home, is I feel like this urge, this home, this town is actually an evil place. It's like a bad place. It's a normal place, and that normalcy is sort of inherently bad or invalidating. I don't know. That's how I read it. So, you know, tell me what you think. You know, is that how you read it? And am I way off? I don't know. Okay. Well, I've got to stretch out. I love doing videos sitting down because I can put the camera on the bed and I don't have to, like, set up my music stand and everything. But it really messes up my old man legs. All right. Well, you tell me what you think of this director's cut. What's your favorite director's cut? Do you also secretly like Elmo? There's the camera.